This is an introduction to the Bootstrap 3 grid system. We're going to be looking at it from the perspective of a graphic designer, no code. And Bootstrap is a responsive framework. So it's a website solution for all screen sizes from desktop to smartphones. It's also a grid system with preset text sizes, color schemes, fonts, and symbol fonts. That said, it's highly customizable, so any of the presets can be customized. So looking at screen sizes, basically the grid system changes from desktop to laptop to tablet to smartphones. So it changes in steps. So on a desktop screen, it has a set width, and no matter what size the desktop monitor is, the container, the content of the website, will be a constant width. And that's important for design because if things were 100% width, they would reflow as device size changed, or on a laptop, same thing. You have a set width container, and the different size laptops will display the content of the website in the same way because it has a set width. All right. Now, when we get down to the extra small version of a Bootstrap grid system, it's displayed on smartphones, and it is 100% width. Now, this isn't a problem as much because usually everything is stacked top to bottom. There aren't any columns, and as far as design goes, it's a lot easier because you're dealing with such a small space. All right, now, so we have our container, and then within our container we usually have several rows stacked vertically. And the rows they fill the container, so whatever the constraints are, they go out to the limits. And those limits are determined by the screen size of the device that's viewing the website. Now, within a row, you can add up to 12 columns. Basically, you put your content within the columns, and this separates it horizontally. You don't have to use all 12 columns. In fact, usually you're only going to be using 2 or 3 or 4, and you want your columns to add up to 12. So you want it. Let's say you have 2 columns and you want them to be the same size going across in a single row. So you would have two 6-block columns. They would each take up 6 parts of the grid system. All right, and you don't have to do things symmetrically. So if you wanted to have, let's say, a narrow menu of 3 parts of the grid, and then you wanted to have your content take up 7 parts, and you wanted to have an advertisement take up 2. You just want to make sure that all of your columns total 12. Columns can be offset, so you don't have to have content all the way across from one side of the screen to the other. All right, let's say you have a wide content column, and on the desktop version of the website you decide it looks too wide. The text lines run too long. What you can do is you can use an offset, or basically blank segments within the grid. You can assign them to the grid system in between or around your columns. All right, now you don't have to stick to the grid all the time. If you have, let's say, a menu that you want to have a wraparound effect, or you have some kind of an alert box that you want to overlap the grid in some areas to draw extra attention, your coder can use CSS to extend the columns overlapping the other columns within the grid system. Now, all columns have a default padding. It pushes the text inward away from the edge of your column. Now, you can optionally add margins to a column. That would add spacing around it. You can add borders to a column, and you can even change the padding value, the default, to increase or decrease the amount of space inside a column before you get to the text content. Now, the thing to keep in mind when changing these values is that they always go inside the box. So when you add these things to your comps, you want to work them inward, not outward, when you're working with the grid system. All right, and they're going to push your text inward on the top and the sides, and then in a lot of cases it'll be pushed down because it has to flow somewhere. Now, for each breakpoint, that is when you move from desktop to laptop, laptop to tablet, or tablet to smartphone, at each breakpoint, your columns can be resized. So let's say you have a menu on your desktop that looks good, it's the right size, and when you move it down to a tablet, it becomes narrower and it becomes cut off because the text is too long in the menu. So one thing you can do is you can change the width of your columns after you hit the breakpoint, after you move from desktop to tablet. So you can choose to increase the size of your column on a tablet more so than it was sized on the desktop. Right, same thing with stacking your columns. When you move from one breakpoint to another, you can choose to stack them vertically instead of line them horizontally. Usually this is the case for smartphones. Now, you can also, from one breakpoint to another, you can choose to reorder or hide your content. So if you have a menu to the left of your content on the desktop, and then you move to a smartphone, and that menu is showing above your content, that can be moved below the content. So anytime you move from a breakpoint to a smaller screen, you can choose to stack your columns instead of line them. And that covers the basics. As far as considerations go for designing for Bootstrap.